All right, we've got a big 49ers update filled with some bad news and also some good news. We can go ahead and start with the bad. This guy, Ricky Pearsall, has been unexpectedly placed on the physically unable to perform, the PUP list, to begin training camp. There are names on this PUP list that we expected to be there, and there are names that we didn't expect to be there. Brandon Aiyuk expected to be on the PUP list, so that is not huge news. But Ricky Pearsall, he was dealing with the hamstring injury during OTAs and then minicamp. The 49ers said that they held him out of the veteran minicamp as a precaution. He is now on the PUP list, so he's not going to be available, at least for the very start of training camp. It's not the end of the world. We need to know more before passing on firm judgment, but I'm just going to share the facts with you right now. Yetur Gross-Matos, 49ers defensive end, has also been placed on the PUP list. Yetur dealing with some wear and tear in his knee. The 49ers said he should be fine by training camp, but he is on that PUP list. So at least a little bit of time, practice time missed for Yetur Gross-Matos. Andre Dillard, he's dealing with an ankle issue and also a knee scope procedure that he had that kept him out of the spring program. That is a swing tackle, veteran swing tackle, former first-round pick to the 49ers signed. He also is on the PUP list. We expected Malik Mustafa to be there coming off the torn ACL. We expected Curtis Robinson to be there coming off the torn ACL. Then there's NFI down here, non-football injuries away from the team facility. So PUP is anything that was sustained at the team facility. The NFI list is if a guy got hurt working out elsewhere. 49ers lineman Ben Barch, who's the front runner to be the starting left guard, at least was. We don't know the severity of his injury. He is on NFI. And George Odom, special teams ace, is on NFI. George Odom was rehabbing from a knee injury last season. They also said he should be ready for training camp. So between, let me get this list back up here very quickly. Between Odom, Andre Dillard, and Yetur Gross-Matos, those are three players who were supposed to be ready for the start of camp, but still find themselves on PUP. It is entirely possible that they'll be ready in 3 or 4 days, but the 49ers had to place them on PUP because they weren't fully cleared at this exact point. So let's just make this designation right now. PUP, physically unable to perform, and NFI, non-football injury. These two lists are not injured reserve. If anybody's placed on IR at this time, their season is over. You've got to make the 53-man roster before you're placed on IR to be eligible for the short-term designation, which misses only 4 games. So going on injured reserve right now would axe the season for any player. PUP and NFI are not IR, and you could actually remove a player from PUP or NFI right after you place them there. You can activate them immediately as soon as they're ready. So we've seen it in the past before where a player is placed on PUP because the rules say they have to be placed on PUP to open training camp, and then they're removed a day or 2 in. So is that going to be the case with Ricky Pearsall? Well, we'll find out because we expected Brandon Aiyuk to be on PUP coming off the ACL tear, and I'll explain regular season PUP here in a little bit. But with the receiving room right now, I know that it's very much in the news because of the Jauan Jennings situation. He wants a new contract. The 49ers are in a position where they seem to be extremely reliant on Jauan Jennings at this current moment. Because if you just zoom in on what this first practice might look like next week, Brandon Aiyuk is not going to be participating, and Ricky Pearsall, who's now on PUP, won't be participating. But we just don't know exactly how serious Pearsall's injury is. It's possible that he tweaked the same hamstring that kept him out of the end of OTAs and veteran minicamp. It's possible he tweaked that away from the team facility, and that's why he's on PUP to begin. Or it's possible that something more serious happened. Either way, a look in totality at the 49ers receiving room shows us an injured Brandon Aiyuk rehabbing from an ACL tear, a veteran and Demarcus Robinson who might be suspended for up to 3 games to start the regular season, Ricky Pearsall in some questionable health since he lands himself on PUP. Jauan Jennings is at the top of the healthy pecking order for the 49ers at receiver, and he wants a new contract. So Jennings, I think, has quite a bit of leverage here, given the fact that he's still under contract with the 49ers for next season, just due to the circumstances. I think that will be resolved with some nice incentives, maybe a little bit more cash for Jauan Jennings. But I do think that the more news that trickles in about different receivers being on PUP, different guys being unavailable, different guys being potentially suspended for the start of the season in the case of Demarcus Robinson, the more that we learn about that, the more you say, well, the 49ers, I think, definitely want to get this Jauan Jennings situation resolved. It is not in their interest to see another hold-in, to see Brock Purdy. I mean, yes, you may get more snaps for rookies like Isaiah Nair and Tariq Owens is a second-year guy. You may get the young guys more opportunities early in training camp, but you also need Brock Purdy working with some of the veterans who can potentially help take the 49ers to a Super Bowl over the course of the regular season. You can't just have this as a rookie exhibition over the course of late July and August. So I think they're going to want Jauan Jennings in practice, and I do think that he's got some leverage to at least sweeten the pot of his current deal. I get it if they don't want to extend Jauan Jennings long-term, since he's going to be 29 years old next year. And since he's only had that one big season statistically, it was only a season where he had an opportunity to deliver big statistically. I absolutely understand, given the resources already allocated to Brandon Aiyuk in that receiving room. I absolutely understand if the 49ers are trying to keep this to a shorter term commitment to Jauan Jennings, but he does have some leverage here to wrangle a little bit better, more fair year contractually from the 49ers. And it's something that nobody envisioned last year because Brandon Aiyuk was still healthy when he was negotiating his contract. Jauan Jennings was down at number 3 on the pecking order. They had just drafted Ricky Pearsall entering the 2024 season, but realities changed really quick when Aiyuk was disappointing and then he tore his ACL and his MCL. And obviously Ricky Pearsall had the whole situation where he had to recover from getting shot in the chest. That meant that Jauan Jennings was with Deebo Samuel hurt as well early in that season for that week 3 game against the Rams. That meant that Jauan Jennings had his opportunity to shine, and he delivered a Jerry Rice T.O.-like performance at SoFi Stadium. And obviously the rest was history. 975 receiving yards, and he is most certainly underpaid now, given what he's been able to put on his resume. The question is, how do the 49ers and Jennings proceed moving forward? Again, back to the PUP list, though. Why don't we go through this whole thing? Brandon Aiyuk coming off the ACL. Ricky Pearsall, hamstring injury. The last time that we heard Kyle Shanahan talk about Ricky Pearsall was 5 weeks ago. He said Ricky Pearsall has a hamstring injury, nothing serious. He's pretty good right now. We're just being safe, so he'll be good by training camp. Again, I have to emphasize that it's vital that we get more information, because the last time 5 weeks ago that we heard from Kyle Shanahan, everything was going to be okay by the time training camp rolled around. It is still possible, and because everybody's going to freak out on the internet, and we're just trying to convey facts here. It is still possible that Ricky Pearsall's back a day or two into training camp, that he's on PUP as a mere formality. But I don't know. I'm not going to say what I don't know. I'm just going to tell you how PUP and how NFI work after I go through this entire list. Yetur Gross-Matos, knee wear and tear. Andre Dillard, as I said, that is an ankle and a knee scope that he had. Malik Mustafa, ACL. Curtis Robinson, ACL. We don't know with Ben Barch. And with George Odom, who's also on NFI like Barch, that was a knee that had him sidelined there at the end of OTAs and minicamp. All right, so now let's make it clear how PUP and how NFI work. In effect, in practice, PUP and NFI are the same thing. There are 2 types of PUP lists and 2 types of NFI lists. There is the training camp / preseason PUP list, which is obviously the one that we're dealing with right now. And then there is a training camp and preseason NFI list. Then there are regular season versions of both lists. We are not talking about the regular season versions at this moment. The versions of the list that the 49ers place players on today are the training camp and preseason PUP and NFI lists, respectively. Players can be placed on these at the start of camp. They cannot be placed on these after they've already participated in a training camp practice. So before camp, when guys come in or when guys are about to come in, you can go ahead and start. If they're already at the facility, you can have a look at to see how the guy's health is. You can go ahead and start placing the players on PUP. What this does for the 49ers is it maintains the ability of that player to later be transferred to the regular season PUP list, where he wouldn't count a 53-man roster spot. So in the case of Brandon Aiyuk, he's likely to miss all of training camp, all of preseason. And in all likelihood, once week 1 rolls around, the 49ers will not want Brandon Aiyuk taking up a roster spot because he won't be fully healthy, or they won't be willing to chance him playing. He'll be transferred from the training camp PUP list, which we're talking about now, to the regular season PUP list. The only way that you can get onto the regular season PUP list is if you're on PUP throughout all of training camp. You don't just get inserted onto PUP later in the season. A lot of people are like, why don't they put him on PUP? No, later in the year, if you're going to put a guy on an injury list to not take up a roster spot, it has to be injured reserve. It has to be IR. So the only chance to put somebody on PUP or NFI is right now, is at the start of training camp. That is a very, very key piece of information, because this is going to allow the 49ers to save roster spots for a handful of players. With a handful of players. Brandon Aiyuk probably going to be on PUP in the regular season. I would venture to say that Malik Mustafa and Curtis Robinson, both of the ACL guys from last year, will also be on PUP to begin last season. But for these other players, we presume that their injuries are less serious, even though we're still waiting for the exact Ricky Pearsall prognosis. These other players, the 49ers hope that the regular season PUP doesn't even come into play. They hope that these guys are activated before then. So they maintain some optionality by putting them on this list now. In fact, they have to put them on this list now. It's a league rule if they're not healthy at the start of training camp, but they can come off at any time. So that's why we're going to have to be paying attention on a day in and day out basis. It's going to be very, very important to track this religiously. It's not like IR, where you place a guy on IR and then you wait 4 weeks because there's no chance that he comes back earlier. I'm going to go through the entire roster right now with this news. So here's a look at the entire roster, and we're going to make our color shadings for injuries based on the PUP and NFI additions that the 49ers just made. So first, we have Brandon Aiyuk, who is already designated here as an injury. That is a pink shading on this 90-man roster. But we can also add Ricky Pearsall. Okay, so we go to Ricky Pearsall's name. We're going to shade him in pink as well. All of a sudden, you start to see just how precarious the situation is at the receiver room, because Demarcus Robinson, he's shaded in teal because he's a new free agent signing. But if he's suspended, we're going to put him into one of these red-colored shadings as well. All of a sudden, Aiyuk, Pearsall, Demarcus Robinson on the shelf. That leaves Jauan Jennings, who's upset about his contract, as your top option, with a rookie like Jordan Watkins and a second-year man like Jacob McCowan competing. And yes, you would have big-time availability, or opportunity, I guess I would say, from some of these young guys. I know they're exciting young guys, but still, they're very young guys. 2 rookies, Isaiah Nair and Junior Bergen. There's T.O.'s son, Tariq Owens, and then you've got Isaiah Hodgins, Russell Gage, and Malik Knowles. So for the 49ers, for Jauan Jennings, they want to get something resolved sooner rather than later. Then we scroll down. There's Yetur Gross-Matos with the knee issue. So we can take this and we could shade it in for Yetur Gross-Matos. Who do we have next? Andre Dillard, swing tackle. Andre Dillard was a recent signing for the 49ers to compete for swing tackle. A lot of people curious about how that offensive line competition is going to work out for San Francisco. Well, Spencer Burford, I think right now, is the leader to be the 49ers swing tackle. They've moved him from guard to tackle. It's actually something that I should reflect on this roster sheet. We'll move Spencer Burford from guard to tackle. There you go. With Andre Dillard hurt, Burford is the logical front runner to be the 49ers swing tackle. They also have Austin Pleasance, who's going to be competing for that role. Sebastian Gutierrez still on the team. Pleasance against Dillard, against Burford. Well, if Dillard is currently hurt And on PUP, we will see Spencer Burford take the majority of those initial swing tackle snaps for the 49ers. All right, moving on. Who else do we have to put onto this list? We put Yetur Gross-Matos on there. I think Mustafa and Curtis Robinson have both been shaded in their injury colors. Oh, Ben Barch. Here's another new one. We don't know the Barch injury severity right now, but he is on the NFI list, so it happened away from the facility for the 49ers. This one is significant because Ben Barch is projected to start at left guard. So this might give Connor Colby, the 49ers draft pick, some earlier reps higher up on the pecking order. I do think that Nick Zakelj probably would be ahead of Colby to fill in for Ben Barch in first team reps. But I think if they're looking at Spencer Burford only as a tackle at this point, Zakelj would get those reps before Burford filling in at left guard for Ben Barch, who is top of our depth chart pecking order, but obviously now on NFI. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the 49ers handle that interior line. Matt Hennessy, the center, he might also be competing for some snaps at guard for San Francisco. And of course, Drew Moss and Connor Colby, the two rookies. Don't forget Drew Moss coming out of Colorado State, and Zach Johnson. Those are also guys who can be competing at the guard position. And then finally, George Odom. Going to shade George Odom. Where is he at? I don't have Odom right now on that 90-man, on the 53-man roster picture. Going to be really interesting to see how that works out over the course of camp. But for now, Odom on the NFI list for the 49ers. So zooming out, this is your injury look at the 49ers 90-man roster. Aiyuk, Pearsall, Dillard, Curtis Rourke already on the NFI list. Torn ACL, played on the torn ACL. He might just redshirt this season. I think that might be smart for the 49ers, the quarterback they picked in the 7th round. Dillard, Barch, Yetur Gross-Matos, Curtis Robinson. And then I'm going to take, this is the good news that I talked about. I'm going to take Jair Brown off of injury shading. Malik Mustafa is going to be there, but Jair Brown is now healthy for the 49ers. How do we know that? Because Jair not on the PUP list for San Francisco. That's the good news in all of this. We talked about the good news this morning of the NFI list for rookies because rookies weren't with the 49ers, so you can't do PUP. You have to do NFI because they got hurt prior to joining the 49ers. Well, Alfred Collins, not on NFI, so his calf is okay. He's going to be good to go. You can check out that video. I already uploaded that a few hours ago. And Marquise Siegel, the safety, the 5th round pick, he's also not on NFI. So those two guys are good to go, as is Jair Brown. Had an ankle procedure over the course of the offseason. They said he was going to be healthy for camp, but as we have seen right here, just because they said he was going to be healthy for camp doesn't mean that player won't be on PUP or NFI to begin training camp. But Jair Brown is officially not on any of those two lists, and I think that is good news for the 49ers safety room. One more time, I could go back to this 49ers depth chart, and we can take a look at what it's looking like in the safety room for the 49ers. Why don't we zoom in a little bit on it? Jair Brown, returning starter. I know that it wasn't a good season for him last year, but he's going to have a leg up. I think now that he can be back at training camp, I think the most likely starters to begin the season at safety for the 49ers are Jair Brown and Jason Pinnock, because Malik Mustafa not likely to begin the season in that first teamer's role if he is still on PUP coming off the torn ACL. Then your first guy off the bench could be Richie Grant, and Marquise Siegel, the fastest safety or one of the fastest safeties coming out of the 2025 rookie class. He had the fastest 40-yard dash at 4.37 seconds. Great athleticism scores. This could be a dark horse to really earn some playing time for the 49ers in his first season. And before you think that's impossible, Malik Mustafa was a rookie last year, and he put up the best coverage stats of any safety in the NFL, and he was a missile in the run game as well. So they want Malik back, but they're also excited about Marquise Siegel, and they hope for a bounce-back season from Jair Brown, who played so well so many times as a rookie, but obviously saw some regression for the 49ers last year. Mike texts me right now. He says, Jair Brown is on my trade candidate list. You know, because he was brought in under a different defensive coordinator. Robert Saleh is now back. He wasn't part of the drafting of Jair Brown. I think Robert Saleh really likes toolsy safeties, guys who can really run. Marquise Siegel had the fastest 40-yard dash of any safety. So, and you go back to Adrian Colbert, who ran a 4.340, whom Robert Saleh loved back in 2017. So he really likes these safeties who have great, great traits. The one knock on Jair Brown was that he didn't run all too fast at Penn State. It was more of an instinctive safety. And, at some point, if your instincts in the league, if they don't carry over perfectly from college to the NFL, that can really hurt you. Maybe that was part of the poor season that we saw last year from Jair Brown. Took a lot of bad angles. Just wasn't a great performance from him. Maybe Robert Saleh will not favor Jair Brown. Maybe he's going to try to turn the page to a more traits-based player like Jason Pinnock. That's a 4.440 kind of guy, a guy that jumped out of the gym. I mean, you looked at Jason Pinnock's relative athletic score. His and Marquise Siegel's are actually very, very similar. So maybe that's going to be the preference for San Francisco. Malik Mustafa, obviously, his spot's going to be secure once he's back. That's how good he was last year. But maybe Jair Brown's the odd man out. Mike thinks that he might be on that trading block. I would say that until guys come back healthy for the 49ers, you want to try to make that safety depth as robust as possible, because it is a position where they're skating on a little bit more thin ice. But let's pivot the conversation back to this guy, Ricky Pearsall, because I think that's the concern at the top of a lot of minds right now. I will say, this is what I have to preface everything with as we're talking about Ricky Pearsall. We don't know how serious this injury is. Again, there's a big time misunderstanding of the PUP list. People think that it's IR. They think that Pearsall is going to be shelved for X amount of games. He could be activated within a couple days for all we know. What I do find concerning is the fact that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers said that he would have been ready to go had they not been being cautious during the veteran minicamp. So he didn't go, but he was already healthy back then with the tweaked hamstring, I think is what they called it. But now he's going to be on PUP and he's going to miss at least the very start of training camp, which leads me to believe that there was some sort of reversion to that injury, right? There was some sort of tweak again. And we know that Pearsall has dealt with hamstring issues before. In fact, before he got shot last year, one of the big worries about Pearsall was, is he going to be able to keep this hamstring okay throughout the course of the NFL season? It was a hamstring and it was a shoulder. Those are two injury issues that were points of concern for Ricky Pearsall. And then he valiantly came back from the horrific situation near Union Square in San Francisco, and he delivered big time for the 49ers over the course of the last two games. I mean, it was one of the great stories in the entire NFL in 2024, right? The guy gets shot in the chest, through and through bullet, comes back and delivers 14 catches over the final two games of that season. What Ricky Pearsall did was special last year. I think it's a testament to how he's built, but we also know that he's been dealing with a lot of hamstring issues, and we know that he's now landed on PUP. We're not sure if it's related. We're going to find out more from Kyle Shanahan on Tuesday when Shanahan speaks. Maybe we collect a little bit more intel before then. But the 49ers absolutely need a healthy Pearsall, because the more that I think about this receiving room, if Aiyuk is missing any time this season, which is likely, if Aiyuk is not his 2023 self, which is also likely, well, then all of a sudden the onus starts to shift to the other guys. Jauan Jennings right now is unhappy with his contract. We're not sure if he's going to hold in. We assume he's going to be there once the 49ers report this next week, but there's a chance that the Jauan Jennings discontent, which I think is rooted in some very fair thoughts. I think the guy is worth way more than the $7.5 million he's slated to earn this year. That can create some problems for the 49ers, right? At a time when they're relying more than ever on Jauan Jennings. Because on top of that, you've also got Demarcus Robinson, arrested for the DUI last November as a member of the Rams. He's pleaded no contest to misdemeanor DUI. That can lead to a suspension of up to 3 games from the NFL. The league applies its justice separately from the legal system. So the 49ers are now waiting for that on the Demarcus Robinson front. And he's somebody, they expected that to be a possibility when they signed him, but they're still going to have to bridge that gap. So you start to get to the young guys at this point, right? As players are going to have to be featured contributors. And one of those young guys is Ricky Pearsall. Now he's on the PUP list. There's going to be a competition between Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing. Both speedy, explosive players, both smaller receivers. They're not going to be featured X guys for the 49ers. You need your X, you need your Z, you need your top two receivers. Who are those top two receivers for Brock Purdy going to be at the start of the season? Because this could veer off into really, really uncomfortable territory very, very quickly. I remember the game against the Chiefs last year when Deebo Samuel was about to be hospitalized for pneumonia, when Brandon Aiyuk shredded his knee, when Ricky Pearsall was playing his first NFL action just a couple months after getting shot, when the 49ers were also missing Jauan Jennings due to a hip injury, when really their only legitimate targets were George Kittle and Jacob Cowing playing in some of his only extended playing time of the year. I mean, they were just completely handcuffed offensively in that football game. The 49ers ended up ranked last in 2024 in average separation at the time of catch or incompletion, which spoke to some of their receiving health struggles. It also spoke to Christian McCaffrey not being available. I get it. It was a complex issue, but the point is that the 49ers were not good enough in that phase of the game to expect high-level offensive success the way that they saw high-level offensive success in 2023. So that's why this Pearsall news for the 49ers is alarming at the very best, but we'll find out a little bit more next week. So that is your 49ers update. I'm going to have a lot more for you right now, so stay right where you're at. I just want you to take a very, very quick look here at the full list as soon as I replace Ricky Pearsall's picture with the list. There you go. This is what the 49ers just did. PUP, Aiyuk, expected. Pearsall, not expected. Yetur Gross-Matos, not expected. Dillard, not expected. Mustafa and Robinson, expected. NFI, Barch and Odom, neither of those two expected to land on the NFI list, which is effectively like the PUP list. So that just happened. Little Friday news dump for the 49ers, but I do caution everybody that we don't know anymore at this moment in time. Why don't I open this up for a 49ers Q&A? Facts only here, good questions only. At least I'm only going to answer good questions. You can ask a stupid question, but it's not going to get up on the screen. I am scrolling through and I don't see any questions yet. I just see a bunch of comments. Mike has a good one. Which wide receiver do I see sneaking onto the 53-man roster? So for this, we're going to open up the roster again. And we're going to go to that receiver position. Good question from Mike. Here's the receiver position. So you can see all the shading there. Aiyuk, Jennings, Pearsall. I mean, questions about all three of those guys, not injury related to Jauan Jennings, but Demarcus Robinson, suspension related question. And then you've got Watkins and Cowing healthy. I think they both make the team. But if, one or multiple of these guys on the left is unavailable for the start of the season, even just one, but I think it's going to be multiple with a potential suspension to Demarcus Robinson, you're starting to talk about two guys who wouldn't otherwise make the 53-man roster making it. Tariq Owens was really, really impressive last year before he suffered the broken hand at training camp. He made a lot of progress in a short amount of time to the point where the 49ers said, you know what, we're going to keep this guy around on the practice squad. Isaiah Nair, he might be the most athletic 2025 rookie in the whole league. I mean, that's how awesome Isaiah Nair's metrics are. The consistency has been the issue for him at receiver, and he's got to show that he can play the nuances of the position at the NFL level. Then there's Junior Bergen. He can carve out a role for himself as a specialist. He returned 7 punts for touchdowns. It's an FCS record at Montana. Hodgins, Gage, Malik Knowles. I don't know if any of these guys make the roster. I actually think that Tariq Owens, he's got some real upside, will have a chance to make that final spot this year. I think Isaiah Nair will have a chance as well. You heard George Kittle talking about Isaiah Nair. The tight end room has been watching the receiving room, and they think that this guy Nair, just some of the routes that he runs, it takes him like 2 strides to get 10 yards. 6'4", 220, 4'40", 40. They have been really, really impressed with Isaiah Nair and his athleticism. If he can harness that to just an acceptable degree, there's a chance that he carves out a role for himself at the very back of this 53-man roster, or at least a spot on the practice squad. I think so much of this will depend on who is actually available and who isn't by the time that week one rolls around. But opportunity does seem to be knocking in that wide receiver room. Mike points out that Jair Brown was possibly a Steve Wilks pick, and now Steve Wilks is the Jets defensive coordinator. I just think the 49ers need to have a little bit more surefire depth at that safety position before they take any rolls of the dice there. Nathan asks, Aiyuk likely to start the season on PUP then? Seems like that's what they're preparing for. That's always been the most likely possibility. But Aiyuk can also, in theory, I'm not saying this is going to happen, he could also come off of PUP a week into training camp. Then you can't put him back on PUP. But so you only take him off when you think he's fully healthy and ready to go. So I mean, this doesn't necessarily mean that Aiyuk begins the regular season on PUP. Although I think with the other information that we had already gathered before this, it's most likely that he does begin on PUP. And once you are on regular season PUP, you have to miss the first 4 games of the regular season. Mike is sending me relative athletic score comparisons of Isaiah Neyor to Julio Jones and Megatron, Calvin Johnson. This is why Mike is great. So we have the question about the 49ers receiver who might take advantage of this situation. You're definitely going to see more reps for somebody like Isaiah Neyor. Well, look at this. This is Neyor compared to Julio Jones coming out of Alabama in 2011. Julio, obviously one of the greats to ever do it. And Calvin Johnson, another one of the greats to ever do it. Calvin Johnson had a perfect 10 relative athletic score. So you can see the guy was an absolute alien. But Isaiah Neyor, 6'4", that's nice. Calvin Johnson weighed 239. I mean, he just was uncoverable. There's a reason they called him Megatron. Well, I mean, what is this? This is Calvin Johnson was 6'5", 240, and he ran a 4.340. I think if you're a cornerback having to cover Calvin Johnson, you're probably just puking before the game, thinking this guy's going to ruin your career, ruin your chances of future employment. So again, wrap your head around this. 6'5", 239, 4.35 40, 152, 10 yards, but 42.5-inch vertical. Calvin Johnson, I think easily the most gifted receiver to ever play the game. Every single one of his metrics here ranks in the 9s. So it's all green. That's green and relative athletic score is elite. So Isaiah Neyor is an elite athlete. 990 is really good. In fact, it's a little bit more comparable to Julio Jones, but Julio Jones was also insane, 998. But Isaiah Neyor with a 6'4" height, 218 pounds, 4.40 40, 156 10-yard splits, actually one of his worst numbers here. Great vertical jump, great broad jump. And the guy has got a lot of physical ability. So when you're looking at, okay, who can potentially give the 49ers some quality reps here while several guys are out in the receiving room, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on the rookie, the undrafted free agent out of Texas, and Isaiah Neyor. Well, you have a big show with Bobby Burton, who covers Texas, talking about Neyor. Might have been an attitude issue at Texas. The 49ers have been very excited by the athleticism he's shown, but that's only half the battle. The attitude's got to be locked in for Isaiah Neyor. The consistency has to be locked in, and I think those two are often correlated. So Pearsall on PUP, that is surprising. Aiyuk is not surprising. We don't know the severity of Pearsall's injuries. We do know that PUP and NFI are not death sentences at this time of the year. It's not like your entire season is done. You could only theoretically be on PUP for a day before you're taken off of it. So it's just a flexibility list at this point. We need more information for next week. There is good news on Jair Brown. He is not on PUP after the ankle procedure over the offseason. Of course, Yetur Gross-Matos, that's another starting caliber player who is on this PUP list. I got a text from my buddy. How serious is this? And, the answer to that is we don't know how serious Ricky Pearsall to PUP is until we know the exact extent of the injury. So we're going to find out a whole heck of a lot more next week as this Q&A continues. We have people frustrated. Mitch says, how freaking frustrating. Honestly, I know injuries happen, but you have one job in the offseason when you play professionally: get and stay in shape, get and stay healthy. Yes, but why don't we wait to see exactly how serious the situation with Ricky Pearsall is before we reserve further judgment? I understand the sentiment. I know a lot of guys do a ton of work away from the facility, away from the team's strength and conditioning. It ends up being tough because they're doing their programs, the team is doing its program. Sometimes those can kind of cross wires, right? And it leads to situations where guys aren't healthy when they're supposed to be at the start of training camp, and that can be tremendously frustrating to a team and its fans. But we just don't know what the exact scenario is in this particular situation. Joe's asking, does anyone know what kind of salary that Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen are seeking? Also, is there any chance they trade for Terry McLaurin now? I don't think that Washington wants to get rid of Terry McLaurin. Guys like Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen can get hurt too. Those are older players, especially Keenan Allen. And I get it. If there's a rash of injuries, if this Pearsall thing is more serious than people would like it to be, then all of a sudden you do start looking for outside help because you do need some experience there. But we should find out exactly how serious it is, and B, keep in mind that just because you bring in a veteran, just because he's had a lot of catches in another system, doesn't mean that he's going to be a great fit with what the 49ers are trying to do, especially since what they try to do, I think, is so unique compared to most of the league with how much receivers are tasked with blocking. And for that reason, I think that Jauan Jennings definitely has got some leverage because he's a guy that fits the 49ers system to a T. Jauan Jennings is, somebody who blocks ferociously, something that not a whole lot of receivers do. Catches the football, knows the entire route tree. He's playing the X, he's playing the Z, playing all the receiving positions with success. In fact, he was the Z receiver for the first time in his life when he had that huge game against the Rams in week 3 at SoFi Stadium of last offseason. So the 49ers, if they're looking for free agent wide receivers, they have to look for specific fits at the position. And it's not always just going to be a big name that's going to fit really well into the position. That's why you want to develop your own guys. That's why I think they're going to find a way to take care of Jauan Jennings this offseason. And that's why you want Ricky Pearsall to be healthy and why you want Brandon Aiyuk to return. These are homegrown players who, when they have been healthy, have delivered big for the 49ers. And that includes Pearsall. 14 catches, 18 targets over the final 2 games of last season. Mike asking, is there any concern with D-line depth given Yetur Gross-Matos' injury? That is a really, really good question, and it's one that probably is going to be slept on because everybody's going to be focusing on Ricky Pearsall with this news. But take a look here. Yetur is going to have a really important role this year because you've got Michael playing the edge, kicking inside on those passing downs. Bosa is obviously Bosa. Bryce Huff is a pass rushing specialist. He's not a rundown kind of player. So you're only really, really trusted veteran when it comes to the outside in combination of playing outside on the rundowns, moving inside on the pass downs is Yetur Gross-Matos, who won an NFC Defensive Player of the Week award last year. This guy's not chopped liver. This is a good player. If he's not available, and they say it was just wear and tear on the knee, so maybe he's back early on too. I got to couch everything with that. But if he's not available, that is a depth concern, absolutely, for the 49ers, because he is a true 3-down type of player for San Francisco. He might not be an elite 3-down type of player, but you need guys, you need dudes on that defensive line to make that a good unit. It's not just a top 4, top 5 situation. It's a top 8, top 9 Russian waves, stop the run and wave situation. And that's definitely something that the 49ers will have to keep an eye out for because Yetur Gross-Matos is on that early PUP list. Here's the full list. Aiyuk, Pearsall, Gross-Matos, Dillard, Mustafa, Robinson, Barch, and George Odom, the last 2 on NFI. All right, hit the notification bell. If you don't do anything else, hit the notification bell so you know when I'm coming live. I'm going to have a lot more for you over the course of the next several hours as I learn more. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.